Greetings YouTube and welcome to the Blue Corner into a Cardfight deck profile, and this one is going to be on Granblue post set 8. In particular is going to be on Nightrose, as with the release of Absolute Judgment. This deck in particular has gotten enough cards to work with that it can become its own thing, and she's very good at what she does. The deck basically plays a bit more like 7Cs, where you call a large board, do multiple attacks on, and then just try and push in with Miss Phantasm, Pyro King, Nightrose for game. However, unlike 7Cs, you have access to, well, you can make use of the new G-Guardian to the best of your abilities, and because of some card interactions, you basically can deny Griffin your opponent with this deck. So, as a result, this is one of those few decks that can actually deal with things like Wiseman, although it's not going to be a surefire thing 100% of the time, but having the ability to basically stop those kind of deck plays, in addition to being able to get a 10k buff, multi-attack, like, you're basically playing the kind of deck that a lot of decks wish they can do. Like, just look at what I just mentioned. You get to basically do the multi-attack game, like Gear Chronicle, but have the ability to shut down an opponent's big Vanguard column like Neo Nectar with a Denial Griffin. Yeah, sign me up for that. So yeah, we'll just dive right into this, and I'll explain what the cards are in here are, in addition to the new G-Guardian and some of the plays you can do with that. And yeah, it's probably going to be a 15+ minute video as a result, so strap yourselves in. Alright, so I think this is the first time I've actually profiled Nightrose on the channel, so I'll need to take a couple moments to explain a couple things that you haven't seen before. Starting with Nightrose herself, so this is the Stride Breaker Granblue, so she's the thing you can actually search off of your Tommy the Ghosty Brothers. And she has two very good skills. Her first one is her GB2, which is a once per turn act, and when one of your rear guards is put into the drop zone, you can mill the top 3 cards of your deck to bring it back. That's pretty damn good. It fills your drop zone, allows you to recycle certain units such as your starter Grenache to get multiple unflips, Skeleton Cannoneer to get another pop, and it's usable during both players' turns, so if your opponent, say, Blade Master tightens your board, you can bring back one of those cards, and she has some really neat interactions with your new G-Guard that I'll explain in a bit. And her other skill is just your typical +1 when your G-Unit strides. Do this. In this case, you get to call any unit from your drop zone and give it 2k until end of turn. It's a simple +1, but given how good Granblue units have gotten as of late, it's one of the best stride break skills in that regard. I'm very curious to see if we'll get a new grade 3 Nightrose to play alongside this and how she'll work. If Chronojet Dragon G is any indication, the new Nightrose will eventually be bonkers. So, run 4 of her. And then I'm running 3 copies of Mighty Rogue Nightstorm. A lot of lists I've seen, at least from Japan, run only 2 of these and instead run an extra grade 1. I cannot commit myself to that kind of just yet, because when I run 7 grade 3s and less, I tend to misride getting the 3 a lot more frequently. But when I run 8 grade 3s, I tend to see way too many grade 3s. So, RNG, I love you so much. But anyway. He is your keyword grade 3, so when you ride it, +1, soul +1, check top 3 or 5 cards of your deck for a unit with a X keyword, in this case hollow, which, well, is a good portion of this deck. And then his other skill is on rearguard, +1, generation break 1. When at the end of the battle this card attacked, if he's hollowed, you can call a unit from your drop zone to a rearguard circle this guy is not occupying, so he just enables extra attacks. And now that we have a G unit that allows you to fill up the entire board, being able to get those extra attacks off has become a easier to do. Like, it's not as expensive to pull off the kind of multi-attacks that you'd get out of a 7Cs deck. And then 4 copies of Witch Doctor of Vanguard Negra Lazy, who is the Glimmerbeth clone for the deck, so his skill is +1, soul +1 when he is called Rearguard Circle. If you have a Nightrose Vanguard, you can choose any grade 2 or less unit from your drop zone except himself and call it to Rearguard, and then he gains 2k until end of turn. And an additional ability of, if he dies at the end phase because he is hollowed, you get to countercharge 1 and soul charge 1. So he ends up being free if you let him die through hollow. There are some rulings to note about this guy, in that if he dies during the end phase and you bring it back with Nightrose, you will not have a chance to get another countercharge and unflip, so don't do that. Just save your Nightrose recalls for your Grenache. And then after that, it's pretty standard fare. Like, you got your 3 copies of Negro Rook, who is your really good attacker. 3 Skeleton Cannoneer, who It's also pretty bonkers. And 2 copies of King Serpent. So, this is an old promo card whose skill is when it's called from the drop zone, you get the soul charge 1 and no flip of damage. So, he allows you to make your Nightrose calls free, and he gives you soul for some of your strides and your Negralazy. Like, you can realistically go Nightrose, call Negralazy, call this guy, and you'll have used 2 counterblasts and a soul, but you'll have gotten back a counterblast and a soul, and then the Negralazy will die and give you another soul and another counterblast. Or you can call this out with Nightrose, make him 10k and unflip the damage, and basically make the call free. So, you do need a couple copies of this so that in case you damage check one, you still have the other option, as he allows you to do some pretty greedy combo plays. Calling him in front of a Negro Bone's pretty good. And then lastly, one copy of Picard, because I have Link Joker at my locals, and that matchup is never fun. Then for the grade 1s, I'm running 4 PGGs. This deck's counterblast heavy, so obviously 4 Stride Enablers, 3 Negro Bone. This is the Pia clone for the deck, so if you have a Nightrose Vanguard and counterblast 1 Generation Break 1, after the battle this guy boosts a rearguard. You may pay the cost of you retire that unit and call a unit with the Hollow ability from drop zone to rearguard. It doesn't have to be in front of him, it can be anywhere. He just allows you to get extra attacks off. And interesting enough, this guy boosting a Nightstorm can allow you to call a full column if you wish. As Nightstorm can call over this guy, and this guy can call over Nightstorm. So if you have another Negrabone and another Nightstorm in drop zone, you can just call another set of these guys back, swing with that, but that's 2 counterblasts. Most lists run this guy at 4. I don't think I actually own a 4th copy. He's been very difficult to find around here. I might have to just give it an order, but again, I didn't want to also go to 6 grade 3s, so I ended up making sacrifices because I really wanted to fit in a couple other grade 1s in here that have some neat applications, such as Sea Rumbling Banshee. This is basically a Nightcrow for Granblue, so Generation Break 1, counterblast 1, sack one of your rear guards, and you can call it to rear guard, and if she's played on rear guard from the effect of her own effect, and she is hollowed until end of turn, she gets a 2k power, so it becomes 9k if you call her through her own ability, and the auto skill of when she dies because of the effect of hollow, you countercharge 1. So, it just allows you to take some undesirable units, such as, I don't know, a King Serpent that's just sitting there, sack it off and call this thing, or like your Grenache if you need to get it out of there, in case you weren't able to get into the drop zone by other means. And then lastly, 1 Head Start Zombie. When this unit is put on rearguard circle, you can hollow it, and if you do, you can send any card from your deck to the drop zone. If he's not hollowed, you just mill 1 card. So he just allows you to thin your deck out by 1 card, and you get like cards that you need into the drop zone in case you weren't able to already, because you weren't able to stride an Obadiah. And then for the triggers, it's pretty straightforward. Like 8 crits featuring Rough Siege Banshee. She provides soul and draw power, and Rampage Shade is your Heart Thump Worker clone, so when your Nightrose attacks, throw into the soul. 5k and a draw. And the soul is very important too. Like, one of your G units uses soul, and that's a very important thing. 4 stand triggers. This thing's really good, buffing a unit by 10k. Goes into the deck, so very important to cycle these during the late game. Finally, 4 heals. And the starter's Grenache, who is really integral for this deck. Pray to God that it never gets bound by Narukami, as you'll have to be very conservative with your playstyle. This guy in Nightrose allows you to unflip 4 damage in a turn, if she's a GB2, so keep that in mind. I'm going to actually set these cards aside, as well as my stand trigger and my, where is he, there we go. I mean, any seasoned Granblue player will know what I'm going to be talking about with these, but just in case you don't know, we'll just have these there. So, on to the G-Zones. G-Zone is 4 copies of Myth Phantasm Pirate King Nightrose. You can run 2 if you want. It's not needed at 4. However, I honestly just like having this second copy in case I need a Nightrose a second time. In theory, you shouldn't have to. Between your other G unit and a Nightrose and like what your deck can do, you should be able to kill them with 1 Nightrose, but it's not like you have a lot of options for the Granblue G-Zone just yet. In time, it'll get to the point where you can cut 2 of these out, but for the time being, is like, you can run 4 if you want, and you can run 2 if you want. It really doesn't make that much of a difference. You do need to run 4 of this guy, though, who is Tempest Calling Pyro King Golosh. He's a triple R from the new set, and he's very, very good. So skill is Counter Blast 1, Soul Blast 1, Persona Flip. When this unit is placed on Vanguard, you can choose up to 5 cards in your soul, send them to the drop zone, and then for each card that you sent to the drop zone, you can call that same number of cards from your drop zone to rear guard, and then those called units gain 1000 power for each face-up card in your G zone. So he is more or less a Night Mist. He's a little bit more expensive than Night Mist, however, he's still on a very good card. Like, he lets you make a board by just having a large amount of soul, which by the time, if you're like first riding this guy, you still get to call at least 2 to 3 things, depending on if you saw any Rusty's Banshee or your Rampage Shades. He can turn anything you've ridden into things like, you can ride a King Serpent, Soul Blast a Serpent, bring back the Serpent, Soul Charge 1. Negro Lazy, he's just great. And the power buff too is really great in the late game. You can open with this, you can end with this. He's just a fantastic stride at any point in the game. Gotta be a bit mindful of how you play this guy, as you do need, as he is a Soul Blast 1 for cost. So if you happen to have ridden, if you never call your 0 out and you stride this guy, you'll have a grade 0, a grade 1, and a grade 2 in Soul. So you'll Soul Blast 1 and only be able to call 2 things through that effect. So that's just to keep in mind. Like, I really wish I could say like a lot of things about this guy, but like, if you've played 7 Seas before with the Night Mist deck, then like you'll use this guy in the same way that you use Night Mist. You call out a board, you get multiple attacks off, and like you end your turn and unflip damage. So yeah, pretty straightforward. And after that, it's just like your basic G units. Like, you got your Blue Heart to correct your board, Bandit Rum if you have no counterblasts, and like literally nothing else, but you never really go into him. One Obadiah, in case you don't have a good soul or drop zone, you can just go into this guy and do your typical Obadiah thing. Obadiah over Nightrose is pretty nice. You can send your 3 units from your deck to drop zone and call back a Negro Lazy if it was one of those units. You can use Negro Lazy to call either another unit in front or a unit behind him if you already have another unit you call, and you just go from there. Like, Obadiah plus Negro Lazy is pretty dope. Once a Breeze because of, you know, grade 2, grade stall, although I think those decks I will see less and less play now that grade 1 rushing is becoming more of a thing. But it's not like I can really run anything else in here other than like maybe another Obadiah. And then for the G-Guards, I'm running 1 Cray Elemental G-Guard Algleam. His skill is when you put it on Guardian Circle, you can discard a card to draw 1. For Granblue, that's pretty nice. Just get the worst card from your hand or a card you need in the drop zone to the drop zone and replace it with a new draw. 1 Deep Corpse Dragon. You don't really use his mill skill that much, but he's still just odd G-Guardian. And then 2 the new G-Guardian Great Witch of Doctor of Banquets, Negro Lily. So this is our generic plus 10k G-Guardian, and it's one of the better ones as it has pretty good synergy with Nightrose. So his skill is kind of plus 1, choose one of your rear guards, sack it. If you do that, you may call a normal unit with the ghosting name from your drop zone. If you call a unit with this effect, then it gets shield plus 10,000 power. Now, the neat thing about this, though, is that if Nightrose is at Generation Break 2, you can then proc her skill to call back the unit that you just sacked. And this allows you to do some pretty neat card interactions in, say, particular, you're playing against, I don't know, Genesis, and they have only 1 Wiseman on, and they've pumped it up, and they're trying to do the Wiseman loop play. You can G-Guardian for Negro Lily, counterblast 1, sack off your Skeleton Cannoneer, bring back your Ghosty. Nightrose's skill will proc off, you mill 3, and then you bring this guy back, and then use his skill to counterblast 1, kill the Wiseman, draw a card, and then at the end of turn he'll die, and he'll be back in drop zone. And congratulations, you just did not for your opponent. Or, in that same regard, you're playing against a deck that likes to multi-attack. Say, Gear Chronicle, and they're doing timely plays. Well, sir, you just need to have a Mick the Ghosty and family on board, and your G-Guardian play, so G-Guardian into Negro Lily, counterblast 1, sack off Mick, call your Ghosty, Nightrose's Generation Break 2 skill, mill 3, call back Mick, And then you use Mixed Skill to give your Nightrose 10k power, and now she's 21,000 versus Time Leap. Yeah, that's... or any multi-attack deck. Like, Nova Grappers will have to go a little bit more out of their way in order to actually do anything. Aquaforce pretty much can't touch you. The only way they're going to be able to actually hit you for anything more than just that'll threaten you for any real shield value, it will be post Lambros restand. So, like, it's a very good G Guardian that allows you to do some pretty sick things, and if we ever get more useful on-call cards from Drop Zone, or hell, you could, like, I don't know, call Negro Lazy and use that to call something else out. If you left your Negro Lazy on board, and you already have any of these cards in the Drop Zone, yeah, you could just sack off Negro Lazy and then call it back, and then call the appropriate card to get a body and that. Granted, this does cost its Counterblast, so you cannot do it as frequently as Kagero can do Denial Griffin, but in a pinch, it can still save your ass, which is what makes this deck really good in the format. Is it's really strong offensively, it's got really good defensive options. It's also one of the more skill-demanding decks out there. Like, if you F up playing with this, you may very well lose. Like, if you get too greedy with Nightrose's callback skill, you will deck out. Like, when I started playing this deck, I made the mistake of trying to play exactly like I did with 7 Seas, and you can't really do that. It plays at a different pace than it, but once it gets rolling and can play that way. But, like, you have to manage your resources a bit better here. As, like, Night Mist is Night Mist, but Nightrose is like a different deck. It's really hard for me to really describe what I'm trying to say, but I think you guys know what I'm getting at here. Like, it's a technical deck. This is one of the more technical decks in the game, and it will reward you for playing it well, but it'll punish you for playing it badly. And honestly, I like decks like these in the game. There aren't very many of them, but when they do come up, I tend to enjoy my time with them, and I enjoy playing this deck. Like, Granblue's pretty freaking sweet, and I'm glad that this clan is where it is. It's going to be a while before we get any more support. We have to wait for that idol booster, but I imagine it'll give us, like, some good stuff for both Nightrose and 7 Seas. Maybe they'll even make Hokkaidos a deck. Given their track record with Granblue support, they might actually make that deck good. Who knows? Anyway, that's all I got for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Sorry it went on a little long, but I had to explain a couple things. As for what you can expect next, I am working on an updated Gear Chronicle deck. I've got the trial deck and most of the main deck cards ready. I don't have Gear Groovies yet, so I haven't had a chance to play test with that. I've also proxied out a Dragonic Vanquisher deck with some of the Set 9 support, but honestly, results have been very underwhelming, so I won't even bother talking about that just yet. Still waiting on the rest of Set 9 spoilers, but oh my god. My tears are eternal for that set. Anywho, that's all for now, so I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time, this is Booster899, signing out.